Hi, my name is Marvyn Harrison. I'm the founder of Dope Black Dads, which is a digital safe space for black fathers to communicate everything that concerns them around the intersection of being a parent and being a black man. Something interesting about myself that nobody else knows is I have no idea. The problem is I've done now probably 80 different podcasts. I stay as close to the truth as humanly possible in all those podcasts. So quite frankly, I've given everything out, so I feel like people do know if they've listened. So there aren't many secrets anymore. That's a new thing for me. Something interesting is I work as an advertising strategist, and I always have. I've done for 15 years. So as well as Dope Black Dads, I have a full-time job and a family and a wife and many obligations. So it's extremely manic, but I think with Dope Black Dads, I'm fueled on passion, and so I don't feel like I'm working when I'm doing Dope Black Dads. So I'm able to find it a lot easier. So Dope Black Dads, I think the role it plays in the community is one is uniting us. I think as black fathers, as black men, quite often we don't align on the issue of parenting. We may align on things like football or banter groups or meme groups or this is the hottest girl in the world groups, but I don't know how many people are sitting there talking about their parenting, their deficiencies, how they were raised, the things that they're trying to improve, the things that they're ashamed about, and we really push our group members to be open, and we hold a mirror to each other to become better men, but also better fathers. And in doing that, I think we've created a bit of a North Star for our community as to how black fathers can be. I was inspired by Dope Black Dads because I was going through a particular period of shame, and I felt quite small about being a father, and I wanted to share that experience with other people. And so I knew about 25 black fathers already, and I just wanted to have a space where I could ask questions. But as I said before, the intersection between being a black man and a dad is an interesting one, and so I wanted to put those two things together, and Dope Black Dads were born. It was just an alliteration and something that I would say quite colloquially before. I never expected it to actually turn into something. It was just a moment of sadness, turn into a group, and then it was just so powerful having really senior, extremely passionate and emotional men speaking openly. I turned that into a podcast, and then Dope Black Dads was born. The biggest role, I'll attribute that to two people. I think my mother played a super black woman role, and I think it's unfortunately too common of an archetype of a role a black woman plays, but she did that to a really high level, and she taught me pretty much all the key values that navigated me into adulthood. And I always say that I felt like she told me like 10 things, and every one of those 10 things I've had to kick into action at some point. And so I think she's a clairvoyant in that way. And I think in adulthood, I think my wife very much has held a beautiful mirror up to me to push me to be a better human being. I think people who often meet us, they respect me, but they really like my wife. And I think that's testament to the kind of person she is. So it creates an environment where I want to be better, and I can't be full of shit, basically, which is great. I think with Dope Black Dads, what I hope to achieve is collecting more fathers. I want to make it normal for black men to communicate in a particular way. We've now launched Dope Black Men, Dope Black Women, and Dope Black Mums, and although they're designed in their own images, I really want them to be a beacon for the community, of a way of collecting us and actually creating a black community for once. I don't necessarily believe that there is a black community per se, but I think we are united in terms of how we are treated in this country and how we're perceived, and I think that creates a community. But I think other than that, we're not a monolith, but I want to create a space where we're all looking for growth, whether that be personally, whether that be socioeconomically, whether that be politically, and we can get stuff done, which is pretty much what we're doing now. I've been doing loads of like personal development work this year, and I think I wish I had done that at the time, but I probably wouldn't have set it up if I knew, to be fair. But I think just always trying to find a better understanding of why I do what I do, and am I doing it from a place of love, or am I doing it from a place of ego, and being able to filter that faster is probably the skill that I'm trying to hone in most, and I find that the most powerful form of existence is when I'm able to be in tune with the difference between love and ego, and what's driving me. So I think anyone trying to start a social movement, I think start it based on your identity. I think start it on the things that you want to fill the gap in. So there's a lot of women's movement, black women's movement. There's a lot of men's movements now. And I think start it on your image and based on who you are. And then I think go find your tribe. I think in terms of developing a career in advertising, I think for me, we're in a world now where going into agencies is a really good and useful way of doing it, but the team that are behind this, when this doesn't necessarily have to go into the advertising agency to be successful at advertising. And so I think starting and finding a project that you can get involved with and try to make a success out of that through comms planning is a really good way of starting. Alternatively, find and seek the mentors in those places that are going to bring you in. We do need more black and minority people in advertising, because I think that lens and that perspective, that experience isn't as prominent in advertising as it should be. And I think the idea about what would I ask my 16-year-old self, would I tell my 16-year-old self? Save. I think my financial planner laughed at me significantly when I told him my income since 21 and how much I have of it left. And he still raises his eyebrow. It's now a barometer for our conversations. And so I wish I had, I wish I had better emotional stability so I didn't need to spend money on things that did not make sense in my future. That is my biggest wish. But also I'm so present at this point. Apart from that one statement, everything else, I'm pretty happy with my journey. I think I've learned so much and I've arrived at a place where I wouldn't really change anything, so it would be disingenuous to try to change anything. But I would always wish I had more money. I wish I had my money from 88 like Jay-Z did. My motivation now is my family, my children who, for me, are just the best thing in the world. I love being around them. I want them to see up close an example of a fearless, powerful black family, and I want them to walk into this world and create their own identity with that understanding. And I think more of us doing that will heal our community faster than probably anything else. I think, that's it. My ultimate goals in life are to love and be loving. I think I've had many financial goals. I've had different forms of success, and I think when I'm happiest is when I'm being loving, and then when I'm happy, I become free, and when I'm free, I actually do all the things that I wanted to do. I've had a very fortunate 15-year, 20-year career in not only advertising but social movements, events, being around incredible people, and the thing that I learned is that every time I was chasing a thing, I was never happy. And then when I chased and operated from a space of a feeling, I found happiness a lot quicker. And now that's all I do. So thank you for inviting me today. I really appreciate it. And that's kind of a part of it. I felt warmth in that email and I felt like I should be here. And so I came, and that's pretty much as simple as it is. My role model right now is my son, because he's like 4, free and informed, and that didn't mean to have alliterate on purpose, but he's like 4 years old. He has all the freedoms, but he's educated. He's just so smart, and I can actually remember being 4. That's the earliest age that I can remember being, and he has so many things that I don't have, and my job now is not to fuck that up by imprinting ideas in his head and giving him the freedom to discover and learn, and actually be a guardian. And I think my philosophy on parenting is maybe potentially different, but it's not out of this world. But my belief is that he's a person already, and he, specifically because I used to see me and him, and I think that's where there's a different connection to my daughter in terms of, and she's also 1.5, so she's not at the point of her own personality fully formed. But for him, he's telling me who he is. He's very consistent in who he is. And every time I take him outside of who he is, he lets me know. And so now I've realized that my job is to get out of his way and be a guardian, rather than this idea of being his parent and I must do things. I must tell him how things work. I must tell him how he should behave and all those types of things. He does it all on his own free will. And when you do it on your own free will, as we all know, it lasts longer. My biggest setback is just emotionally. I think emotionally I wasn't as developed as maybe other people who come from different forms of safe environments. I think anybody knows the Black Council Estate story, you probably get an idea that there was errors. Like I grew up in an era where it was about people getting shot all the time. That was the crime of choice. I actually think knife crime is worse because it's way more personal and physical than it is to try to shoot someone and hopefully miss. But I think for me, that was the crime of the time. And I specifically remember just over a 3-year period, there wasn't a day where I wasn't concerned about whether I was going to make it home. That was just the environment. I wasn't into anything particularly adverse. It was just, it could happen. It was happening to everyone around me. And I think I was very fortunate to get through that period. So that affected my ability to emotionally grow because I spent so much time being fearful of survival that I never considered the idea of growing and surviving into my later ages. So I didn't prepare myself academically, emotionally to survive. So I think now that where I am now, I've managed to navigate it and make sense of it. But I think that was the biggest stunt in terms of growth for me. To be honest, the biggest accomplishment is being here. I think, and I don't mean that in a morbid sense, I did plan to be alive all the time, but I do think there has to be a certain level of respect for people who have been around from when I started. And this is not that long ago, but there's generational things, and I call that a 5-year increment gap. And I think if you are active in community work, activism within the Black community, and you last several groups of 5 years, I think at that point I call them all survivors. And I think if you're still working at a high level, you're performing at your job at a high level, you're still helping the Black community at a high level, you're building things, you're breaking down walls, that there are less and less as age goes on because life hits you in different ways. So I call us the survivors, and I have a lot of respect for the people who are still doing that work. And my thing now is to create a path for people who are just hitting their 30s, people who are in their mid-20s, who are looking up for what does this phase of their life look like when they're in their career, in their peak of their career, when they're getting a long-term relationship, they're considering having children, they're trying to buy a house. Managing and getting to that destination is a goal that when you're 20, you look at and have a vague idea you want to do it, but to actually get there, what are the optimum steps? How do you do it without, destroying yourself? I remember when I found out I was having a child, and I went and got a house, a car, and about 3 other milestones, all in the space of like 6 months. And I just remember by Christmas, I just collapsed, and I couldn't move for like 21 days because I wasn't prepared. And I think you can do that preparation from early in a very small incremental way. And it means that when you are at this point of my stage in life, it's a graduation rather than a breakneck approach to trying to be successful and whole. I used to be passionate about Arsenal until they emotionally destroyed my idea of peace outside of myself. And then I think more now, my passion really is just about finding ways to be happy. And again, it's quite highbrow, but happiness was always sold to me as a permanent state. And I always used to chase this idea that I'm going to be permanently happy. And then I realized that actually it was Kanye West who identified this idea about genius moments rather than being a genius. And then I applied that to other things. I was like, actually, it's not about happiness, it's about happy moments. And what are those things? And when you get too far away from those things, how do you create an environment where you can return to that? And I think walking through the world with from the perspective of a loving environment is the most powerful thing that I've ever discovered, because I used to have this thing like, I'm not loved. And I think that's a different thing to being liked and respected and people being admiring you. But to be loved is a different energy. And I think when I discovered that I wasn't being loving in the first place, I've put all my understanding and focus from that understanding. And since that day, just everything I asked for has come and more. And I think that's a testament to when you want something and you think you can manipulate or design it in your mind versus doing it from a position of, I am going to be loving and I'm going to create an aura around me which is loving, and all those things will just want to be around anyway, so they just happen. And I think it's a bit highbrow depending on your New World philosophy. But that I've actually found it's worked. Go, quick fire me.
Text or call?
Cool.
Night out or night in?
In.
Fill in the blank. Beyonce is?
My fearless leader.
Favourite spend?
Spend.
Favourite holiday?
Jamaica, Carnival. I'm going again next year. Anyone wants to come with me, DM me.
That's probably good. Tall or short?
I'm tall, my wife is tall. Short people should sit. You pointed at someone. I didn't look at her. You looked at her. I love you. And I'm not looking at you either, but I love you. I'm sorry that they did that to you.
Invisibility or super speed?
Invisibility.
Burger King or McDonald's?
Neither.
Oh.
Trash.
Favourite colour?
Black.
Favourite person?
Me.
Favourite song?
Oh, Black Effect by the Carters. If you listen to Black Effect and you hear Beyonce talk about her husband, that to me is what love is. No one can tell me nothing. It's a married internal thing, but if you listen to Black Effect by the Carters, which is the Jay-Z and Beyonce joint album, listen to that album, and me and my wife really do. We turn up. That's our turn up joint. I can't do like Young Thug or whatever is the new little whatever, but I can do that.
Movies or series?
Series.
Run or walk?
Walk.
Sun or snow?
Sun.
Cats or dogs?
Neither.
Oh.
My name is Marvyn Harrison, and this is Making Moves by Issamovement.